as many college students do. I practically lived off of fast food and pizza delivery during my years as an undergraduate. I went to a school in my hometown. So lucky enough for me, I didn't have to live on campus and suffer through the cafeteria on a daily basis. But nonetheless, my eating habits usually involve anything with fried in grease and covered in cheese. Of course, back in my early 20s, I had the metabolism to handle it. Now in my late 30s, I've sworn off of fast food forever. Yet before you praise me for my healthy lifestyle, please understand, I don't do it for my own health. I lived in a small apartment back in those days, a typical college student dwelling adorned with garage sale furniture and movie posters. It was a humble pace, but it was an expense, so I didn't have to get a roommate, and the great part of town was surrounded by shopping and restaurants. Since my apartment was at the bottom floor, it was uncommon for me to come home to a bunch of advertisements taped to my door or hung on my doorknob from local businesses. I would often find coupons and takeout menus, and by now I have amassed quite a collection. I was familiar with every restaurant in my neighborhood. I knew which ones delivered and which ones didn't. I knew which ones stayed open late and which ones were fast or slow or generally overpriced. I guess you could say I ordered out far too often. One night, as I was studying for an exam in the late hours of the night, my stomach began that all too familiar rumbling that had so many times before disrupted my ability to concentrate. As usual, I had been so wrapped in preparing for the finals that I had forgotten to eat dinner. And as usual, I would resort into some late night delivery. It was approaching midnight, so I knew that a lot of the regular places would be closed by now, especially being a weeknight. I shuffled through my collection of takeout menus in the kitchen drawer, trying to decide who to call. The only places that delivered at this late were pizza joints, and I just wasn't in the mood for pizza. Not again. I was about to give up and just dial the nearest pizza place when I came across an advertisement I hadn't seen before. Or at least, I don't remember having seen before. It was just a square piece of glossy paper that looked as if it was torn from a magazine, or one of those inserts they put on the newspaper. Strangely, I didn't remember having this torn out. But then again, I have been in a fog of constant studying for nearly 2 weeks, so perhaps maybe I saved this and had just forgotten about it. The ad featured a cartoonish clown mascot holding balloons. Beside him was a comic-styled speech bubble with the words "Carnival Burgers, now open until 3:30 a.m. We deliver." Beneath the speech bubble was a telephone number. I have never heard of Carnival Burgers before. Was it a new place? I had reservations about ordering a burger by delivery, but I thought, why not? I mean, how bad do you have to be to mess up a burger? I dialed the number and it only rang once before a voice picked up on the other end. "Thank you for calling Carnival Burgers. Would you like to try our special house burger?" The voice sounded almost electronic, like if it was pre-recorded. No thanks," I said. "I'd like to place an order for a delivery." "Excellent. I would be happy to take your order, sir," the electronic voice replied in a far too upbeat manner. "What would you like?" "I would take a hamburger with cheese, pickles, lettuce, onions, and tomatoes, a side of fries." "Would you like mustard, mayonnaise, or our special house sauce?" Mustard, please." "Excellent. Your order will arrive shortly. Thank you for calling Carnival Burgers." Then the line disconnected. I figured that the person on the other end must have accidentally hung up. I hadn't given them my address or my payment information, and the voice hadn't given me my total. I dialed the number again to complete the order. This time it just kept ringing. I let it ring for what felt like solid 5 minutes. When no one answered, I hung up and dialed again. the same thing happened. The phone just kept ringing. I thought that maybe they were busy, which would have been odd being so late in the middle of the week. Maybe their burgers were just so good and maybe I had just gotten lucky enough for the first time. Doubtful. I tried one more time. Finally, about after the third ring, the line picked up. The same electronic voice spoke, but this time it sounded more slower and deeper, like the recording had been slowed down. "Thank you for calling Carnival Burgers. Would you like to try our special house burger?" "No thanks. I actually called a little while ago and I think the line is disconnected. I never gave you my address." "No worries, Jake," the slow electronic voice replied. "Your order is on its way." Click. I never gave him my name. I was suddenly hit with a wave of confusion mixed with uneasiness. My illogical brain began to weave through the scenario, which they could know my name without having to give it to them. Maybe I ordered from the place before, and I just didn't remember. Maybe I had some sort of number for recognition software on their system, so that the repeat customers would be displayed on the database or caller ID of some sort. Maybe that's also why they didn't ask for my address. Perhaps it was already on file from a previous order. Or maybe I did give them my name, and I was just mistaken thinking I didn't. As much as I wanted to have that explanation to make sense, I knew I never ordered from them before. I have been absent-minded at times and forgetful, but not that forgetful. I have never heard of the restaurant before, but I did have that ad in my drawer. I decided that the most logical answer was the best one, and that surely I must have ordered from them before, despite having talked myself into this conclusion. I felt uneasy as I waited for the knock on my door. I couldn't focus on my studying. I turned on the television to break the suddenly overwhelming silence of my apartment. I flipped through the channels. Being a broke college student, I couldn't afford cable, so my late-night TV choices were consist of infomercials, religious programming, and talk show reruns. I settled on some trashy talk show where the host was telling people who was or who wasn't the father. When the TV signal was cut in with static, the commercial popped up on the screen. It was snowy, and the sound of the quality was poor. A clown just like the one in the printed ad danced in front of a small building with a sign reading Carnival Burgers. The same electronic, overly peppy voice spoke. "Come to Carnival Burgers, where the fun never stops, now offering delivery." A phone number was flashed on the bottom of the screen. Static dissipated throughout the screen, returned to normal. I turned off the TV. Just as the TV clicked off, there was a knock on my door. I hesitantly approached it. I peeked through the peephole to see a clown, balloons in one hand, and a paper bag with Carnival Burgers printed on it. In the other, I gulped and took a deep breath and opened the door. The clown smiled and said, "That will be $8.66, please." It was the same electronic voice from the phone. I pulled a $10 bill out of my back pocket and handed it to him. "Keep the change," I said, trying to mask my nervousness. "Thank you. Enjoy your order and please call us again. Next time, try our special house burger." The clown handed me the paper bag. I took the bag and thanked him. He just stood there for an uncomfortably long time, and there was an awkward period of silence as he just stared at me before I slowly closed the door. I thought that maybe I should have just asked him how he knew my name and address, but I let it go. I waited for a moment and then looked out the peephole. He was gone. I had been so hungry earlier, but now I hardly wanted to eat. I opened the bag and found nothing unusual inside. It was just my order. Just a hamburger with cheese, pickles, lettuce, onions, tomatoes, and mustard with a small side of fries. It was warm and smelt good. I felt my uneasiness diminish and my hunger return. I ate the burger and fries, and it was actually quite decent. It wasn't the best burger I've ever had, but certainly not terrible. After eating it, I studied a little while longer before crashing about 2 a.m. A few days later, it was the weekend, and I was driving home to my parents' house to spend the weekend with them. A couple of days on my mom's home-cooked meals and my old comfy bed was just the thing I needed before finals week. They lived in town, so it wasn't a long drive, and I liked to visit when I could. As I was driving, I came across a road construction. I followed the detour signs and off to a road that I was unfamiliar with. I was aggravated, but as I said, it was relatively a short drive to a small detour wouldn't make much of a difference. The detour guided me to an old residential neighborhood. There wasn't many businesses, just all houses, a small park, and there it was, on the corner of the intersection. It was the building I had seen on TV ad, Carnival Burgers. I pulled into the parking lot and stopped, and it was certainly the same building, but it was unlike the one in the ad. It was old and run down, painted sign faded and covered in dirt. Some of the windows had been broken out and replaced with boards. It looked as if it was been abandoned for years. I got out of my car and peered through one of the windows. Inside were booths, tables, blanketed with dust. There was also cracks on the wall, cobwebs draping all over the small amounts of furniture still left inside. In one corner was a plastic statue of a smiling clown holding a chalkboard menu with the now barely legible words, "Ask about our special house burger." I felt a little bit weak in the knees and pain in my chest. This couldn't be the same place. Once again, my logical mind began to rationalize the situation. This was obviously just an old abandoned location. The restaurant has moved and reopened somewhere else. There was no "now located at blank" sign, but that had to be it. I got back in my car and continued to my parents' house. Later that night at dinner, I asked my mother if she's ever heard of Carnival Burgers. My parents lived their entire lives in the same town, so if anyone should know about it, they would. When I asked her when she told me, "Oh yeah, that old burger joint. It was shut down a long time ago, said for sanitation reasons. It was actually kind of a big deal when we were kids. We all loved going there. Sure, it was kind of a McDonald's knockoff, but it was fun. They had this clown that would give out balloons. What was his name?" My father cut in. "Gestro, because of that weird voice of his. Some sort of electronic voice box. I thought it was creepy. I thought he was funny, and I was sad when it closed down," my mother said. My father continued. "They said it was for uncleanliness, but rumors said that it shut down because of the disappearances." He looked over his glasses and spoke with a melodramatic tone for effect. "Oh, those were the stories older kids told us to scare us." "What stories?" I asked. My father replied, "They said a lot of people in the neighborhood started going missing, and the only thing the cops could find that they had in common was that they each ordered the delivery from the Carnival Burgers on the same day they disappeared. Even weirder is that they ordered the same thing, the special house burger." I decided not to tell my parents about my experience. I have never ate at fast food ever since.